Hello and namaskar. Welcome to 37th Sheetalnath Conversation Show. We today are having a parlay like we have on every Sunday. It reminds me of a cathedral full of brimmed with the celestial beams, which transcend our state of mind into something very subtle, something very, celestial and very serene feelings, and also the salubrious, aroma that lie very, very deep into the base of our civilizational strength, our civilizational roots. Through our anecdotal streams, we have been able to meander into the base of the heart to nourish the arid and the hard terrains. Those are consequence of disconnect, clogging of our roots, connection to our roots. So in a way, we are trying to revitalize and rejuvenating these roots of our people, our diaspora across the globe. And I think this is a great wonderful experience together. Around 36 landmarks have been passed till now in the Sheetalnath conversations, and we had the great luminaries visiting us Sunday after Sunday, and we have almost touched all the aspects and the shades of our civilization, our land, its climate, its peaks, flora and fountain, water bodies, towns, streets, art, journey, evolution, politics, culture, and whatnot. I think this has been a great rendezvous, and you all have been enjoying. We all together have been enjoying this beautiful journey and odyssey to visiting our roots. A new science which has come today, which is, it's being known that if you have a connection with the roots, are revitalized, they are fresh, they are they are vibrant. Your intelligence of your generations, your children, their vision and confidence becomes enormous. So that is the new science. So the roots are very important aspects of our personality, and we belong to something of a very ancient civilization, as ancient as Tyndall Bisco puts it, that Sheetalnath, this Kashmir is much much older civilization than ours in the West. So having said so, today, coming to the today's topic and today's theme, I feel that we all know that British ultimately took 50 years, almost a half a century, to control complete India after the proclamation and creation of that Act, Government of India Act 1858, in which they created a battery of British taught Indian officers who were authorized specialists and administrative skilled personalities who were trained, and most of them were the ICS, but they had to had their pledge for the British hierarchy, British hegemony, and to the Queen. Their presence, in a way, was a they were acting as an interlocutor between the Indian masses and the British hegemony and the British colonialists. And it definitely served the purpose of British, and they had no other. There had no other option, because those were the officers created and appointed by the British Empire. But what happened in when the third world countries were struggling for the professional expert, administrative experts, India had a privilege. India had a privilege having a robust battery of civil servants who, at that point of time, tried to, contain, try to deal with the chaos of transition of power, and also one of the greatest tragedy which happened in India, the partition of our country, and then also try to re-establish this law and order, and stability, and also progress. At the dawn of our freedom, we could well understand the chaos, the hurricane challenges. Those were there in front of these great officers, and with their wonderful understanding and wonderful training and professional expertise, they try to deal with it to much reasonable possible level, because it was altogether a mess in those times. But now, since we have come of age, and we can see there is a revolutionary change into the structural and the configuratory part of this civil service selection of from selection of civil services to the training of civil servants in the country. We have a great vast reservoir of civil servants across India nowadays, and we can see they are the administrative experts. They are trained, they are much exposed into the art of governance, into the art of, this policy advice, into the art of development, helping the people out. They are literally our assets, and this to handling a vast and intricate and complex country like India. I think it is all the credit goes to them. Today, we are having, a very special guest, a very distinguished bureaucrat, a distinguished civil servant, admired and respected by all, former Chief Secretary of Jammu and Kashmir, who has a multifaceted personality, magnificent personality, and every facet, is so wonderful. It is so delightful and so amazing. His name is Vijay Bakaya, IAS. He has also been the former advisor to the Chief Minister and member Legislative Council. As per the survey going on in vogue in these days, it has been found that he is to be called and he is to be known as one of the best ever chief secretaries of Jammu and Kashmir, because of his administrative professional expertise, because of his excellence in the work, and his dealing with the crisis management, dealing with the welfare of the people and development of the state as it is, and other many challenges, very vast amount of challenges which these bureaucrats face. So it is a great honor to have him with us. He is a person of many faculties. Many of these things are not known to the common masses. He's a gentleman, a humanist, core at heart. You could visit to his office when he was as a head of the state. He was the chief secretary of the state on a very high position, bureaucratic position. Any pedestrian, any common man like us could walk into his office. If we had a genuine grievance, he would definitely address and redress to it. So that was how Vijay Bakaya is. He just said that he was a hero, known as Dilip Kumar, during his theater times in Jaipur, when the auditoriums used to be thronged by the people, and there used to be lathi charge, and they didn't have the space to get more people in. So he was a very he's also a very great cricketer. He has been playing cricket all along, even during his service. Also, he had tried to break these barriers of upper and lower in the echelons of power, the upper strata and lower strata employees. So he's a man with a very different taste, very different color. He's a wonderful orator. His recitation of poetry, I have heard other day, the Santosh Bakayaji's poetry he recites. I mean, his voice has a very deep vibrations. He's a very different and a very enchanting and a very capable and potential personality, a native of ours. So, it is very difficult to define such a person with his huge qualities. It's just one liner of introduction. It is better we invite him into the studio, and let us all rise with reverence, love, enormous love, and respect towards our this native personality, this former chief secretary of Jammu and Kashmir, former advisor to the chief minister, former member legislative council, an actor, a trainer, an orator, a social activist, and whatnot. So let's welcome uh, Vijay Bakayaji into the studio.
Good
Bakaya
evening.
sahab,
Good evening. Good
good
evening.
evening, Bakaya sahab. You are welcome to the 37th Shitala Conversation Show.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me on your show.
Thanks a lot, Bakaya sahab.
And
It is a great.
you have said so many things about me, and I feel very elevated And I didn't. I don't know whether you were talking about me or somebody else,
It
but
was about you.
I do feel very um, elevated. I must say that you have talked about some of my qualities, which yes, I do possess, but then they were part of my nature.
Yeah.
And
Thank you very much, sir. That is a it's a great honor again, a great delight to hear from you. And certainly, we can say we can talk about all these aspects of your life during the descent of the program. First of all, I know one thing about this. I was talking to Subhash Kak Sahab, Padam Shri Subhash Kak Sahab, other day in Shitalat Conversations program. He said that in Indian spiritual system, spiritual science, there is a word triad. I mean, triad is something which is essential in all spiritual systems, spiritual configurations, Indian Oriental spiritual configurations. Uh, you, I mean, it is said that the Venus of the East, as Moorcroft calls it, and the city of seven bridges, Srinagar, then the place where the Taj Mahal is on the banks of Yamuna, and then a very hustleful, bustleful city like Jaipur, full of culture, full of ethos, full of architecture, wonderful monuments, wonderful palaces, wonderful forts, and the festivities and folk dances and dishes and cuisines, a land of very, very spiritual eminence, a wonderful, wonderful place, and Jaipur. So all these three pyres have been probably have been the pyres of you making of Vijay Bakaya, the personality of Vijay Bakaya till you finally became an IS officer and joined the civil services. Tell us something about making of Vijay Bakaya as a personality who's loved and admired by everyone around, despite of him being at the echelons of power. Tell us about those younger days of yours, your formation days of yours.
well, I was born in Srinagar and grew up there for about 4 years, from 1946 to 1950.
Yes.
And then my father was teaching in Biscu School, decided to look for greener pastures, and he went to Agra, where he was appointed as a professor in St. John's College. I was 4 years old then. My mother, myself, and my grandmother, we all went to Agra, and
Okay.
there we stayed for 10 years up to 1960. I did my schooling, started my schooling in Agra from class 1 to class 8. I studied in St. Peter's and grew up in an environment which was free, where there was a lot of interaction between scholars, which I saw happening in my house with my father, and also whenever he took me to his college in the evening to listen to seminars and to listen to other cultural activities that were happening, to hear, to see Shakespeare's plays being enacted by that famous Shakespeareana troupe, which
Oh,
included Jennifer, who later became Shashi Kapoor's wife, and
Jennifer,
that
Jennifer Kendall.
that that is
Jennifer Kendall.
Jennifer Kennel, and her father, a fantastic actor. I remember his enactment of Shylock, and it was amazing. I still remember he brought Shylock to life, and he brought Shylock's uh, better aspect also to light. I mean, he didn't portray him as a villain, and in those days, it did seem to me that I may someday also come on the stage and act, because I felt that I had the potential to get into the other person's mind and heart and
Right.
bring him up before the audience. So those were formative years, 8 years, 10 years in Agra, and that is a time when Taj Mahal was the focus for all guests who came here. I used to be their guide,
Oh,
self-appointed guide, although I was so young. And the first impression that I had of the Taj Mahal was overwhelming. The huge monument in marble. And sometimes I wondered what kind of love was this that Shah Jahan had for his wife Mumtaz, that he built such a huge monument. And once you entered the chamber where he and his wife are buried, you
now
felt slightly chastened, that after all, this is the reality. What you see outside was just a facade. And and then we saw the Red Fort, we saw
yes,
Akbar's
yes.
grave and all that. So that gave me the impression of the
You must have
stupendous
gone Fatehpur Sikri also. Beautiful place. Fatehpur
Fatehpur
Sikri
Sikri. Yes, Fatehpur Sikri.
was
I did
shot there.
go there. All those monuments give you an impression of the splendor and the
Splendid Mughal.
power of those Mughal rulers,
Yeah.
and that did leave an impression on my mind. And when later on I read history, I wanted to read the medieval history to get a better idea of what these rulers were like. And in 1960, we shifted to Jaipur when my
Okay.
father was appointed as a professor in the university there. And I spent another 10 years. I completed my schooling, did my senior Cambridge in 1962, then my BA honors, and then my MA in history. Then I got appointed as a lecturer in the university. And
Oh,
all this while, I was
okay.
getting pulled into the theater, pulled into dramatics. And I found my teachers who were interested in the theater. They brought me onto the stage as an actor, but we did English plays in the beginning, Shakespeare particularly. And then I shifted when I became some kind of
Only
um,
Shakespeare. It was
some
only
kind of a
Shakespeare. Only Shakespeare's
well-known
play you did English theatre because
in
I was
English.
also
In English,
English
English,
theatre.
we did Shakespeare only
Only Shakespeare.
in English.
Merchant of
The
Venice,
they,
Othello.
they, 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 they were not professional theater people, but they were professors of English who
Okay.
had interest in dramatizing Shakespeare. So we did those plays. Uh,
Helmet.
I, I played Hamlet in one play, and King Lear in another.
King Lear.
But
Beautiful.
but but then there were people who were theater people, professionals. They thought I had some potential to come on to a larger canvas. So they
Okay.
brought me into the Hindi theater.
Oh,
And the first person to bring me into the Hindi theater was Pincho Kapoor. Probably you may have heard his name. He
yeah, yeah. He
related
was an
with,
actor, television.
yes,
I mean,
actor,
yeah.
actor. He belonged to Jaipur, but was in Bombay most of the time. And he came and assembled a group of people interested in the theater, and we did some 4 or 5 plays in his direction.
Hmm.
And we found, I particularly found that his style was cinematic,
Hmm.
like look this side, put your head on this side, take
Okay.
your step this side, take that step that side. That kind of a restricted our creativity. And
Okay.
luckily, what happened was that Mohan Maharshi, you must have
Mohan
heard his
Maharishi.
name, who became the NST director
And it's
later on. He came from Mauritius back to his home, Jaipur,
good.
and then we did plays in his direction. And that's the time when our creativity got expression. I did the the Urdu adaptation of Pygmalion, Bernard Shaw's Pygmalion,
That's
and
wonderful.
this was the adaptation made by Qudsia Zaidi in
Mhm.
Urdu. The play was called Azar Ka Khap. In fact, that was my swan song. You know, the last play that I did, and I played Professor Higgins, who's called
Oh,
Azar in the play. I
that's a
played
wonderful,
Professor Higgins,
wonderful
and
play.
the Eliza Doolittle was Hajjo, a girl selling flowers in Barabanki. So that kind of a play we did, and it became so popular. Probably that was one of the plays in which, as you mentioned, there would be a lathi charge because all people who wanted to enter could not because the hall was full. And we took that play around Rajasthan, and I was so fortunate to have had an interaction with Mr. Al-Qazi, the
Oh,
legendary theatre
great.
man.
Nine of
And
great.
he saw some of my plays. I did Evam Indrajit also under Mohan Maharshi, Badal Sarkar's Evam Indrajit, and
Wonderful.
some other plays. Shutur Murg I did. So that was a very
Rakesh, you did Mohan Rakesh
uh,
play and
Mohan
Tendulkar.
Rakesh's Adhe Adhure. Adhe Adhure I did.
You did
The
other play?
yes, the one that Om Shivpuri had done. I
Okay.
did that. I did that character.
Oh,
Uh, um, um, Although doing that character almost split my character, split my personality. But
it's a very
it was a
versatile.
very illuminating experience, a very enriching experience. That, and in fact, Mohan Maharshi, when I filled up the form to take up the IAS, Mohan Maharshi came and told me, for God's sake, don't take the IAS. You will become one of those ordinary people who are pushing files because you are a great actor. Please make acting your profession. And for
Right.
some, I got influenced by that. And in fact, in the year that I filled up the form for the first time, I did not go to take the exam because I thought, yes, I'll make act theatre my profession. And in any case, I had a secure job. But my father came and told me later on, you have disappointed us. We wanted you to take this service. I said, I am already secure as a lecturer. I'll retire as a professor. So, but this is my hobby. Um, so let me go. And by that time, as you said, I had begun to be called the Dilip Kumar of Rajasthan. So I
Yeah,
told my
I've
father,
heard a great deal about this.
I told my, I told my father, look, I am basking in the glory of being called Dilip Kumar. So that gives me a lot of satisfaction. Let me carry on. But then something told me that theatre may not be a very viable profession. In those days, you hardly had any remuneration for your acting.
Yeah,
And
theatre was always an amateurish work throughout the year.
amateur, it's almost, you had to
Yeah,
pursue it as a hobby.
yeah.
And next year I took the IAS exam, and luckily on the first attempt I qualified. But the dilemma that I faced was that I was sent to Jammu and Kashmir, cadre, whereas my preference had been for Rajasthan because I had grown up there. I had, forgotten Kashmiri to some extent. The only Kashmiri that I knew was the Kashmiri that I talked with my grandmother, who didn't know any other language. And so, but since I had said my mother tongue is Kashmiri, and I happen to be the only one from Kashmir in that group, I was sent to J&K cadre, and from 1970 onwards, up to the time I retired, I remained in service in Jammu and Kashmir.
But
And
going back to the Jaipur days, I have heard about, sir. There were certain because one of my Mamaji Muju Saab was also mother's mama. We call them mama. Muju Saab has been there. He probably was in director education, something like that. But that was the family which वो 40-50 साल 550 years back चले गए होंगे. But before that, 100 years, 150 years back, there were Kashmiri Pandit families living in Jaipur, like Atals were there and Dars were there. Do you know any of those in those times? Did you have a connection or acquaintance with any of them?
no, in Jaipur, we didn't have many Kashmiris
Okay.
who we knew, the Atals, and of course, yeah, But in Agra, we knew many Kashmiris who
Okay.
were non-Kashmiri speaking, but the
Yeah.
Takrus and
Don't
the
speak
Kunzurus and
Kashmiri. Speak
the
Kashmiri. Yeah.
Kardjus, Kunzurus and the Takrus. And we used to meet, and the only time they appeared to be Kashmiri was when they celebrated Shivratri, and other festivals when the ladies looked for the Atohoru and the Dijoru words which they couldn't pronounce properly, but had a vague idea. So it but they just could not speak Kashmiri. But we did interact with them, and in Agra, particularly, my father was a mentor for so many people from Kashmir who came to the engineering college or
Dayalbag.
medical college
Dayalbag.
from
There was one more.
Dayalbagh,
Yeah.
Dayalbagh Medical College, and the engineering college. And they used to come to us. We tried to make them comfortable, and they felt so comfortable in the Kashmiri environment.
Oh,
So,
yes.
but in Jaipur, yes, we interacted, but there were not many Kashmiri Pandits in Jaipur who were outsiders. I mean, who had settled a long time back in that place. Most of
Mhm.
the Kashmiri Pandits in Jaipur in our time were those who could still speak Kashmiri, who were not very ancient.
Your home was basically a Kashmiri home, a typical Kashmiri home. Your father had migrated for greener pastures, becoming professor over there. But you had a culture. You had maintained your Kashmiri culture there, and the speaking Kashmiri speaking must have been somebody in the family, the elder one, grandmother, mother, somebody might have been there who might have been talking to you in Kashmiri. The dialect completely was forgotten, or it just
No, no.
remained.
As I told you, I had the basic smattering of Kashmiri because I had to talk to my grandmother in that language because she
Okay.
didn't know any other language. So I didn't completely forget the language, but my confidence was very shaky when I spoke Kashmiri. And in fact, I faced this problem when I got posted to Baramulla. My first posting was as SDM Riasi, where I didn't face any language problem. But when I went to Baramulla as an assistant commissioner and started talking Kashmiri, my friends would pinch me and say, "You shut up. You you don't know Kashmiri. Your pronunciation is wrong, your accent is wrong, and your grammar may be wrong. So stop talking Kashmiri. They can understand your Hindi." So,
Urdu,
but
Hindi.
gradually I realized I can't remain this cadre without talking in my mother tongue. And gradually, because I had that foundation of 10 years with my grandmother, I was able to revive the language in myself and was able to communicate properly after some time. Although my pronunciation continued to be westernized and it was not actually Kashmiri pronunciation, but then I
Yes.
was able to make myself understand. And now I've acquired the confidence to talk to the public in Kashmiri. And when I stand up in my political avatar, I feel confident that I can talk to Kashmiri people in Kashmiri without making any faux pas.
You're back to you. Thank God you're back to your roots.
Oh
But
yes.
Jaipur,
In fact, it's been return of the native for me. When in
yeah.
70 I came back, it was after 22 years, and it was return of the native. So ever since I joined, my perspective has been that of an outsider insider, the outsider looking inside, you know. So
Outside
that gave me some kind of an objectivity, which helped me later on.
self-development. So Jaipur had a great indelible impressions on your childhood and your making and your personality. I personally feel this belt, entire belt, this western side, from Jaipur. Jaipur is the most, considered, people are considered to be very nice. Jaipurians are considered to be very nice. Rajasthanis rather, and then the Gujarat. Gujaratis are business minded, but then again very good, vegetarian, nice people, and then the Maharashtra. So this is my observation because I travel. Also used to travel a lot. So I feel that Jaipur had a great effect on your personality, and that personality speaks for now. Sir, I would like to come to your cadre now, the main specific question, probably, which I wanted to ask to you in this program. We have a great legacy of bureaucracy in post independence India. And we know that earlier to that, in colonial rule also, it had started from, in 1857, 1867. Satyendranath Tagore's brother did the ICS, first ICS, and then the chain followed. All the Bengali people did it, and we had even Subhash Chandra Bose did it. Finally, he returned it back. He said that I will not be serving. I'll be fighting the British Empire. And we had our native Kashmiri, probably T.N. Kaul Saab, who also was an ICS qualified personality. Kindly tell us about, because I have heard great stories about Kashmiri bureaucrats in Indian post-Indian independent India, who had done the marvelous jobs and who are on the very very important positions. Kindly apprise the spectators of this program through your own wisdom and understanding and knowledge, what how this whole scenario was, who were these people, and what they did.
Jawaharlal Nehru was Kashmiri. At
Yes.
least his background was that of a Kashmiri. His roots were in Kashmir, and he openly said that his home is in Kashmir. Uh, so when he became prime minister, o- obviously because of his political career beginning from Allahabad and other places where there is a big concentration of Kashmiri Pandits in Allahabad who
Allahabad,
have
yeah.
migrated and settled there for the last 2 or 300 years. So he had contact with those, and when he became prime minister, he looked around for civil servants who belonged to the community. And luckily for him, he had some people who had qualified in the ICS and had carried on into the Indian Administrative Service after independence, and became big uh, officers. For instance, T.N. Cole, he became
Yeah.
foreign secretary. He became foreign secretary and twice, and then he became ambassador also. Then there was P.N. Huxer, the legendary P.N. Huxer was also ICS, and he
Brilliant.
was very close to Indira Gandhi, and he was her main advisor, and she depended upon him till he fell out with Sanjay Gandhi over the
Sanjay Gandhi,
Maruti
yeah.
over the Maruti project, and then he had to resign. So these two are very illustrious examples of the civil servants who had qualified in the ICS and who carried on after independence. And there were those, the ICS officers were those who had a very broad vision, who were scholars, who had been brought up in the British
British
system of
training,
education,
training
the
and others.
British system of education. And but yes, they thought less like Indians and more like the British, because that's natural. And Jawaharlal Nehru used to say, I think in English, but speak in Hindustani. So this particular stream of officers
People, yeah.
entered the Indian Administrative Service and provided a lot of sophistication, a lot of wisdom to the bureaucracy. And P.N. Dhar, I wouldn't say was a civil servant because he was an economist, but he also entered the administration, the governance system, became
Governance
the
system.
principal secretary to Indira Gandhi.
Indira
And
Gandhi.
I know he shone in that avatar and became a very important component of Indira Gandhi's government. After independence, of course, there were many IAS officers who became very important in the government. who qualified the Indian Administrative Service. In fact, the ICS was started only in 1939, and
yeah,
the ICS people governed or were bureaucrats for about 18 years in the system under the
yeah.
British. And
By
well,
70, the cadre was off. By 70, the cadre had gone.
yes,
1970s. Yeah.
yes, the 70s, the cadre had gone. They were, all of them had retired. But it was always a pleasure to interact with those people who had been IACS,
In our
because
bus.
their vision was broad, and their experience, which they had imbibed, had made them really reflective and philosophical, because they were brought up in an environment where the education system made them think, made them really enlightened. And those people who came into the IAS from 47 onwards, 48 onwards, were also those who had been brought up in the British system of education. And they provided the same kind of um, vision to the administration as those who were in the ICS. But
Yeah.
gradually, the Indian Administrative Service got Indianized, in the sense that those who later on entered the Indian Administrative Service were those who had come through the Indian education system,
System.
and they were not those who thought in English and spoke in Hindustani. They were those who thought in their mother tongue or thought in Hindi and spoke in the same language. So they got more absorbed in the system. And in 1950, Sardar Patel said the civil service is the steel frame. It's the steel frame. It is a frame which holds the country together. And since this period, the Indian Administrative Service has become a real harbinger of change, real instrument of change, transformation. There may be aberrations, but every civil servant who is in the IAS has a vision, has a focus, has a particular professional competence to achieve
Yeah.
the objectives
No.
of the government. And that is how, despite so much turbulence sometimes, we find that normalcy returns. And that is because the bureaucrat, the civil servant, has
Civil service.
been on his feet. Now, the biggest example of how the civil service has worked would be in Jammu and Kashmir. You know, in 1990, when
Coming to that,
such a
we'll come to that later.
cataclysm happened.
Yeah.
Cataclysm happened when there was a convulsion in society, when
Yeah.
the whole population was in the streets shouting for something they dreamt of, Nizam Mustafa, when the whole system had collapsed. That time, the civil service remained on
Mainly.
its feet.
I
And
agree.
and you know, there were many of advisors to the government who came between 90 and 96 when there was governor rule. And they used to say that, look, your officers are not touring, your officers are not going to the interiors. What kind of a bureaucracy is this? I used to be more vocal than the others, so I would get up and say, look, sir, uh, I think you are mistaken. You judge us by how effectively we are able to maintain essential services. We
No
are
doubt.
able to maintain electricity supply. We're able to maintain water supply. The food depots are full with grain. And how can these officers be judged on whether they are touring or not? Because they are always under threat. They get phone calls, anonymous phone calls. We'll kidnap your daughter. If you go out, we'll kill you. But despite this bureaucracy has maintained the system where, as divisional commissioner, I remember I had to send broomsticks, I had to send gas cylinders, I had to send masala, I had to send cooks, I had to send medicine from here because that was not available in Kashmir, so that our officers who were living in hotels would not starve. But
Bagaza, we'll come to that bit a bit later. That's a very important aspect of your life, and you have done a lot of wonderful job there. First of all, I mean, you have wonderfully explained our the people Kashmiris who represented in ICS and then in the corridors of power in the post-independent India.
no, we have in Kashmir also, J&K. We didn't have the ICS people here, but
Yeah,
the first batch of the IAS included some officers who became illustrious representatives of the bureaucracy, and PN Cole was one of them. He ultimately, when he was inducted into the Indian Administrative Service, the initial constitution, he was a Tehsildar, and he rose to the rank of Chief Secretary, and then retired and became chairman of the Public Service Commission. So he was an illustrious example of a Kashmiri Pandit civil servant. And there were many others who followed, and all of them left an impact.
yeah. So, I mean, I remember that, as you rightly said, you're talking about the Patel. I remember, I think, Larry Collins and Dominic Lapper's book, that Freedom at Midnight, who have written Oh Jerusalem is Paris Burning. They're into political fiction. I read much younger when I was a teenager. I probably remember that somewhere Patel, this Menon told Patel that now I have dealt with this consolidation of 525 states. I was there to assist, sir. But I'm a Brown Saab. I'm an ICS. I'm a their fellow. So people don't trust me. Then Patel told him that you are an Indian. Earlier you were just working for the foreigners, the colonizers, the looters. Now is a time when challenge is there, and now your services are more required than it were required in the earlier times. So that's how, sir, the whole this crust, the elite crust of civil service administration still now is a great backup to this great vast country with its challenges and intricacies. Sir, one thing more I would like to ask: there are certain personalities still in the bureaucracy which are not approachable. You were the one, as I earlier said, that anybody, any commoner like us, could go into your, if we had a genuine problem, we could enter into your office. You are slightly different. I mean, people used to admire you because you used to really go to the at the grassroots level, meet the people, and understand. But many among us, many among the bureaucrats here, they probably still follow that legacy of Brown Saab. The doors are closed, and I mean, they don't people don't meet them, and the whole feedback of the people who are aggrieved is being passed and carried forward by these people, the babu clerks in this their office, and whatever air they give, that is being catered to that particular bureaucrat. But apart that, that's another story. Majority of our bureaucracy is really an asset for this great country. But your role, tell us, why were you a different personality? Why were you so approachable? Did Jaipur play a role? Did your background play a role? Or was it something else within your heart, some deeper sense of understanding, some deeper obligation to your own self, that you were so admired, you used to cater to the minutest possible level, and you were so friendly. There was no class, you were not a class conscious bureaucrat like those people who think that, some of them think that they have become the emperors. Sir, please kindly elucidate about this aspect of your personality according to your work, how you did it in Jammu and Kashmir.
Well, anyone's behavior is shaped by his past experiences, which he has imbibed in his own particular way. But we were told that this bureaucrat is a faceless person who works from behind the curtain, and he is not supposed to be known to the people, because he's not supposed to get influenced by the people. What the people are to be are supposed to know the political man for whom they have voted. And but I probably, you may have hinted correctly, I grew up in an environment where, as an artist, as an actor, I interacted with human beings with the intention of understanding how they behaved in different circumstances. So I used to sit with the chai wala, the pan wala, I
I
used
know.
to take a ride in the rickshaw just to understand. So this way I developed a certain empathy with all kinds of human beings, and I think this particular attitude I carried into the civil service, and I thought that a civil servant is like a doctor. People who have some problems come to him for a solution. Now, if as a doctor you remain behind closed doors and the person who has come to you for succor
Wonderful.
is unable to see you, you are not being fair. You can be accused of professional misconduct. But the point is that every bureaucrat is not required to meet the people. But today, the time has come when the people want to know who is this gentleman who says he's behind the curtain, who holds my destiny in his hands. He is pushing a file in which my present and future are
Is
trapped.
involved.
He has to give me promotion, he has to give me transfer, he has to take my grievances into account. Who is this man? So the time has come, in my opinion, when if a bureaucrat remains behind closed doors and doesn't meet people, those people are sometime going to come and kick the door open and say, look, I am here, take care of me. Now, I believed and I practiced this faithfully, that I cannot understand my job without really hearing the people who want to meet me. I cannot understand what poverty is, why a particular person is poor, why a particular person comes weeping to me saying that he has a problem at home. Because all if I hear this, I become richer as an administrator. My whole vision improves and I can react and respond accordingly. Those who remain behind doors and push files only have a limited perspective, and that creates problems. So I think the Jaipur and the theater thing did help me
They helped you.
to become people friendly, to be able to respond to everyone at his level. I didn't feel uncomfortable with somebody who came to me and was totally impoverished. I felt like he was my own person. I knew him. Similarly, any aristocrat also I could interact with. So this whole gamut I was able to handle because I had that empathy developed in me, and I think the theater experience was the reason. So I
Makes
believe, I believe that in the civil service, you have to be people friendly. You have to be visible, whether you are a secretary to the government, whether you are a deputy commissioner, whether you're a divisional commissioner, you have to be accessible. Otherwise, the books are wrong now when they say that a civil servant is faceless. The books are wrong when they say that a civil servant does not require votes. So why should he bother about people? But he is the person who runs the government in the real sense because he advises the political class. He
Obviously.
gives the advice to the political class. If he doesn't really know how the population pulsates, what is their thinking, how they what are their expectations, how is he going to advise? So I think advice will be proper if you have the whole uh, perspective, which perspective you acquire through interaction with people. So you will be able, but if you start advising only on the basis of inputs that you get from your officers, your policy decisions may go wrong. And
Very
that's
true.
what's happening today. That's what's happening today. We are cut off from the people, and
You
the
could say
people
you could say
are alienated. They're alienated in the sense they feel nobody cares, uh, and the bureaucrat thinks that he has no responsibility to care for them because it's the political man who has been voted who has to care for them.
That is a dichotomy. That's a great dichotomy of our times. That's so. I mean, Bagay sir, you have been a person who, even in the echelons of power and the great political, because in ours is a very very towering Himalayan, but a very intricate state with a very wide terrain as well as the challenges, political challenges right from the beginning. We had three different zones and three different cultures in those times, and it was not an easy affair to run through. And then the people with different political parties came in, and you remain a bureaucrat. You became a chief secretary as well. But you have always been liked by even the all the politicians, irrespective of who they were, because probably your attitude of I can't say in my layman's language. I can say in, I don't know how they call it in bureaucracy, crisis management, disaster management, especially when you what you were talking just now. One of the greatest volcanic imbroglio happened in around 1990, when the whole population of people had to migrate from Kashmir because of this roads were filled by these terrorists, and entire atmosphere was vitiated around. It was the time of rape. It was like a mini situation of a partition. A bureaucrat like you, with the sensibility of an artist, with an aptitude of a bureaucrat, a competent bureaucrat, and a person whom all the power, the people in the echelons of power, they like because of your competence. How did you deal with this entire? Please tell us this whole narrative and anecdote. People don't know much about it.
This about the exodus of the
Yeah,
Kashmiri Pandits.
yeah, yeah.
You,
Muslims also exoded at that time. Bit Muslims also. Some Muslims
oh
also came
yes,
out.
oh yes, oh yes. They also came away from Kashmir
Okay.
uh, because I mean, in the early 90s, I was the divisional commissioner here in Jammu.
Yes, sir.
There was a
Yes, sir.
political government. Farooq Abdullah was the chief minister. He sent me here. He said, "You handle this division." And I was trying to get familiar with problems here, the day-to-day problems of the people, backward areas, far-flung areas. And meanwhile, certain signals came from Kashmir which were alarming. For instance, the killing of political people before 1990. Tiklal Taplu, for instance, that
Stop.
legendary icon of the
Right.
community. He
Right.
was killed on the roadside. And Mr. Nilkant Ganju,
Justice Ganji.
the session judge,
Right.
he was killed in Hari Singh High Street. He was shot dead. And uh, this somehow appeared to be absolutely unusual because in Kashmir we had not heard of murder like this. We
It
had not
was not.
heard of killings like this. And suddenly in January, uh, Farooq Abdullah resigned.
Right, sir.
I had to see him off from here at the airport. And I asked him, why are you resigning? Who's going to govern the state? He said, they've sent Jagmohan here. Now let him handle. They didn't ask me about him, so I'm resigning. I said, sir, I have no business to tell you, but I think you should not resign. No, 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 I can't handle this. They didn't ask me. They humiliated me. So he left, and
My God.
came. Jagmohan came on 19th January 1990, and in 18th January 1990 to Jammu, and then he had to go to Srinagar. So by that time, things had begun to happen from Kashmir. People had begun to trickle into Jammu. They had begun to trickle into Jammu. And in Kashmir, there was a huge congregation of people every day shouting, Hum kya chahte, Nizam Mustafa. And the
My God.
civil administration was helpless how to handle them because the congregation was absolutely phenomenal. When on the 19th, he had to go, and he was upbeat because he had been governor here. He had done lots of developmental projects. He wanted to go around Jammu before he went to Kashmir, and we sat in his office. before we were supposed to move around. And suddenly he got a phone call. He was ashen. He was totally devastated. He said, "Something has happened in Kashmir." I said, "Sir, you immediately take the plane and go." That was the day when almost uh, so many people got killed because the congregation had become violent. That day, the first cordon and search operation happened when police entered the houses of at night and began to search for militants, and that had created a huge outcry. And remember, I thought that was the day when people thought this was not the Jagmohan we knew, who was very popular with us. And at this time, migration started. I got reports that Kashmiri Pandits had come to Jammu and they were looking for shelter. And after some time, I found that at night, early in the morning, Kashmiri Pandit families in trucks would park their trucks outside my house and start asking for help. And
Correct.
inside my house, my mother, my wife would plead with me to take care. They had thought that there was a man from their community who would go
Yeah,
out of the way to help.
natural.
And
Very
this was
natural.
a personal trauma for me. And the
Yeah,
conflict for me was that I had to handle the situation as a professional, but at the
yeah,
same time,
yeah,
I was a Kashmiri Pandit who had to feel the pain
pain. Yeah,
also. So we handled it somehow. I'm grateful still to the civil service here. We had no political dispensation. We were on our own. The governor was in Srinagar, but we rose to the occasion. I had a friend in Calcutta. I told him send tents. He kept sending tents. We had no money to give him, and first come first serve. We gave tents and set up colonies, tented colonies at Muthi, at Nagrota, in Purkhu, in Chidi, and in Misriwala. And after some time, that fellow couldn't provide us in more tents. About 4,000 tents were provided and tented colonies were set up. And we had a crowd of 25,000 outside my office as divisional commissioner asking for help. They didn't have money. What do we do? And it was a restrained but very angry crowd. So I had to talk to Jagmohanji on the phone, landline, saying that they want this, then come down, tell them, can we settle on this? And this way, for about 6 hours, up and down, and with the crowd, we fixed this relief 1,000 cash relief, free ration. And that's how somehow these people got their succor for some time.
sometime.
But and many people had to stay in rented houses. Then there was another class who had remained outside the ambit of our relief package, the teachers, the professionals who were salaried people.
Salaried
So
people.
I
Yeah.
had to fight with the government. Look, they will have to be given their salary. The salary that they were taking shall have to be continued. And I had to fight hard for that because the bureaucracy was adamant that how can you give salary when they're not paying? So I had to tell them that extraordinary situations require extraordinary solutions. And
Wonderful.
ultimately, we were able to give salary to them and treat their period here as duty. And this was a great service we were able to do to this teaching profession, the professionals, which gave them a lot of relief. And ultimately, when there was a problem of students, where do they carry on with their studies? Those who had left engineering midway, those who had left school midway,
It
then
was a chaos. It was a disaster. It was a disaster. Times were
and we,
chaotic.
we, we, we were able to open evening colleges. We were even able to open evening schools for these
Camp schools,
children in the same buildings in which the classes were held, usual classes were held for other children. And the teachers who had migrated, they were the people who taught in these schools and colleges. And what was inspiring was that out of these colleges and schools, many brilliant people came out who are now well settled. And I at that time, and then we had this outflow of the educated people who got seats outside in professional colleges because of Bal Thackeray and others, and Mr. Kao, who was the education secretary,
Also,
who managed all this, Kao Saab, who managed all this for them. And the turmoil subsided to some extent. And I had the privilege of working with a DIG, Mr. Gopal Sharma, with whom I had a lot of synergy. And together, we were able to take out of the box decisions because those were required. Those were required, how to give ration cards and all that. And it was a very learning experience
that
and
is
a
a
satisfying experience in the sense that we were able to prevent the chaos from happening.
that is something very expected out of a personality who has some sensibility and sensitivity for human brotherhood, pain and agony for situations like that. Because this was an historic situation, it was a miniature of a partition kind of a thing. But then again, I would like to say that you have used your best possible resources and best possible capabilities and skills which you had as a bureaucrat, and you had a great position. You were a division commissioner of Jammu at that point of time. Really appreciable, sir. Uh, Tell me one thing I want to know. You have been the chief secretary of Jammu and Kashmir state, and this and a personality like you have been able to do a lot of service to the cross section of people across religions, across races, across caste, color, and religions. Even the people who were serving with you, from the smallest possible officer to the highest possible officer, they never find a differentiation in your dispensation with them. You are always pro people and helping people and trying to utilize your offices. What was the need? You became the advisor to the chief minister. I don't know, maybe that was a requirement. What was the role there? You became advisor to the Ghulam Nabi Azad Sahab. And then you became member legislative council. What was the reason of a person of this stature who was not only a bureaucrat, he was loved and admired by everyone. He has done a lot of work all his life, contribution of the society and the department and the country. What was the need of coming to the politics? Politics is a game. I can't say the harsh words. It's a game of the thick-skinned people. You must have a political bones. You need to have a very very rough skin. So, what was the need, and how did you come, and what did you did? What was the purpose and goal and vision to come into the politics?
Well, as you yourself mentioned, I was different from many civil servants and bureaucrats in the sense that I was close to the people. I made it a habit, I made it an obsession that I should be with the people, and I felt comfortable with all kinds. And I had this passion to be able to help people who came to me. And I think this particular passion to help, to serve, made me come into politics after retirement because I believed that while in government, I had the platform of the government chair, which symbolized the government's power. While I was sitting in that, I could use that power to deliver the service of the government. But after I retired, I had no platform to be able to help, to be able to carry on with my passion. I thought if I sit at home, I'll wither away, and I should be able to remain close to the people and be of help to them. So I thought of a political platform. I mean, I believe, and I sincerely believe that if you do not have the passion to serve the people, you should not enter politics. And that is should be your only motivation to serve the people. But you can be an NGO, but then as an NGO, your scope is limited. So I thought of joining politics only to be able to serve the people. I mean, many might say, "No, look, this is a hollow slogan. Everyone says this." But I believed in serving the people, and I practiced service for the people. So the only platform that I had was the national conference because I had worked with Sheikh Abdullah, and after that I had worked with Farooq Abdullah, and I saw that this party was a regional national party which had which was secular, which was believed in equitable development of all regions, and I thought this was the right platform for me. Where also one of the factors that helped me to take a decision was that in politics, I'll be able to represent my community more openly, help the community more openly than as a civil servant. And that was one reason also that I entered politics. And Farooq Abdullah made me MLC. I contested the post of member legislative council, and it was a fortuitous victory because for the first time in an election in the legislative council there was a tie, and in the tie we had to ask somebody to draw lots, and a person, a wayfarer, was brought in. Two pieces of paper with my name and the other person's name were put in the box, and that wayfarer was asked to pick up the one paper. But the catch was that whoever came out from the paper, whose name, he lost. He did not win. But
Oh,
whoever was remained in the box, he won.
that would.
So when the election commissioner started this process, you could understand how suspenseful it must have been for me. That my first foray into politics was going to become a disaster. I may not, I may lose the tie. But luckily, the paper that came out was the name of my other person, and the paper that remained inside was me. So
Yes.
I won. So I became an MLC, served as an MLC for 6 years, and there are many people who were not born when I was a civil servant, who were not born when I was working for the government or for the people, who on Facebook and social media keep asking, what has this Bakaya done? And they were not even born then. But in 6 years that I remain an MLC, I have uh, no hesitation saying that I was able to use the constituency development fund that we got most constructively and most transparently to benefit the Kashmiri Pandits spread all over the province, especially living in Jammu, who had not been provided lanes and drains and electricity poles and transformers because they did not have an elected member here because their vote counted in Kashmir. And the Kashmir MLA could not go out of his constituency. The advantage of an MLC is that he can use his constituency development
Yeah.
fund anywhere. So I spent about 9 crore rupees in
Wow.
providing lanes, drains, infrastructure to many colonies in Jammu. And those people who were not born then are saying, "What did Bakaya do for them?" So
In
I
politics, when you are in politics, you have to be prepared for all these salvos.
no, yes, yes. No, I mean, I'm still not a politician in the sense that when I go to a public rally and I'm there at the appointed time, I find there's nobody around. And when they come rushing to welcome me, all that, to put the ribbon which I had to cut, I tell them, look, I have not yet become a politician because I don't make people wait for me. I come on time. And then I've still not become a politician because I don't make false promises. But but I have the privilege of being able to say that I used the opportunity of becoming a legislator to serve my community and to serve all those who were not represented, yeah, who were not looked after by the MLAs, whether they belong to Poonch, whether they belong to Doda, whether they belong to Pulwama. So that way, I had this satisfaction. But
But
and that's the work.
yeah, that's a great. You have done a lot of work for that. I know that you have done a lot of work for community development and especially the migrants. But then again, I'm saying that unfortunately, Kashmiri Pandits cannot send their representative to the legislative assembly We didn't. I mean, there were not people. Although we had the great people like Shivnarayan Potedar and other people in those times. I mean, they'd probably. I mean, they couldn't foresee that things would be so much polarized within period of time, and at least they could have protected one or two seats reserved in the assembly for the Kashmiri Pandits. Things would have been different. A political leader without a constituency, without being into the legislative assembly, it's itself a kind of a dichotomy, a kind of an oxymoron. How to do it? You need to come through the back channel. That is the only way. Is it so, sir? That's what I feel.
Uh, you see, Pyarlal Handu was one of the few elected representatives of the community. Um, Mr. Shivnarayan Photedar also was
He
an
was.
icon of the community. Icon of the community. Mr. Kashyap Bandhu was not in the assembly, but he was another icon who represented the community. And you know, I have to say that the Kashmiri Pandit community has not exercised the power of his vote. He has never in, entered the political arena with the intention of electing a representative. You see, when in the last election, Mr. Amit Shah was made to say 44 plus mission, he was told by the community that we'll win many seats for you in the valley. So he gave eight mandates to Kashmiri Pandits. And in the results, what happened? Seven lost their deposits. And one Habakadal seat, which we could easily have won. And traditionally, Habakadal is supposed to have been a Kashmiri Pandit seat. Uh, that also we lost because despite having indicated that there were 10,000 votes for the candidate there, he polled only 4,000 votes. And all of them were not from Kashmiri Pandits. So you see, as long as I have, I have realized that if even 50 or 60% of the Kashmiri Pandit voter turns out to vote for a candidate in his constituency in Kashmir, at least 5 seats in Kashmir can be won because of the Kashmiri Pandit vote. Because his vote can be decisive if the competition between the main parties is very close. And but the Kashmiri Pandit just does not understand that his vote has to be exercised. And today, symbolic representation is not a norm.
It's
In the
not
past,
substantial to make the
you
things
see, reservation a
yeah.
reservation of seat has certain problems, certain constitutional problems. But what we have suggested and what many others are suggesting, that in order to give a voice to the Kashmiri Pandit in the forum of the assembly or the
Yeah.
legislative council, there should be a provision for mandatory nomination of one or two Kashmiri Pandits in the assembly, or one or two Kashmiri Pandits in the council, and some in the Rajya Sabha and the Lok Sabha. There should be a mandatory provision. There is a provision like that for women, for artists, and others. Why not for Kashmiri Pandits? That could be a more viable proposition
That
rather than
could be
asking for
possible.
reservation of a constituency. So we have to first of all develop a an instinct for politics. We have always remained a pressure group, because probably we had a sense that we are secure because our prime minister and his advisors belong to the community, so they'll take care. Now the times have changed. We have to take care of ourselves, and that we can do if we have a representative elected by us. So that realization has to dawn upon us, and we have to come out in large numbers to vote for the candidates who
That's
belong to
very
a.
important. That's very
Yeah.
important. That's very important. Because I mean, we can have this is a very beautiful discussion, course of action for Kashmiri Pandits and representation and political structure. This is a subject in itself, and you are a very well-read personality, exposed personality who has risen in the corridors of power. But that will be for some other day. We'll have a complete discussion on this subject. But today, I want to what is most alarming to a common man like me and to others as well. We, as you mentioned about those great names into the Indian I mean, bureaucracy, who through formal or informal channels became very popular and had a very, very great positions like Haksar Saab, like Piendar Saab, like Tien Kaul Saab. I mean, such a wonderful, you yourself, and there are a lot many people later on as well. Kashmiri Pandit bureaucracy. We
Khalsa was
House
a prominent
also
presence.
was a great personality, and I have wherever I went, because during theatre days we used to go for small, not for favors, but whenever they used to see our name, they used to get happy. I mean, that was the attitude of those bureaucrats, and I don't know what has happened to this community. We all go for this corporate sector. Suddenly, there's a brain drain. I mean, people of our community, our youngsters. I am seeing that Shafi Saab, one of the worthy commissioners, Shafi Pandit Saab, is doing a lot of work in Kashmir, and some people from Kashmir are coming. But the people outside the Kashmir is outside the Kashmir, like us, Kashmiri Pandits. I don't see anybody opting for this civil services examinations. And I think a personality like you, who's active, who's agile, and who has done so much for others, this should be also an alarming issue. And what do you think about this aspect and how to deal with this?
It did strike me while I was MLC that the community was taking the easy recourse for a livelihood, which
Yes,
was provided in universities and professional colleges where seats were reserved,
yes,
especially for engineering and MBA. And they were not looking at this option, administration. Um, so I, along with some colleagues, decided that the time has come to tell the community that administration is a very important option for them, because in the past they have been in the administration. In fact, the Kashmiri Pandit has been known to have been part of the government at various levels throughout centuries. Even in the uh, pre-Dogra era, the Kashmiri Pandit used to be holding important positions. Uh, so I interacted with the community elite and told them, "Will you support my initiative if we start an informal kind of a coaching center and tell the young people that it is possible for them to take the IAS examination? It's not difficult. Let's try." And Shafi Pandit's attempt was at the back of my mind. So Dr. Ashok Bhan, retired DG,
yes,
Kuldeep
sir.
Khora, retired DG, and Mr. T.K. Razan, a retired officer from the Army, MES. We sat together. We said, "Look, let's do some talent hunting and bring in some youth. We'll interact with them." And in 2018, we started talent hunting, and we were able to collect about 20 youth who
Oh,
were graduates, who were doing graduation, who had done graduation, who were looking for jobs, and we started our interaction. The first attempt was to tell them, "Look, IAS is not beyond you. You can enter the Indian Administrative Service if you get the proper guidance, if you get the proper reading material, and if others can qualify, why not you? Engineering, computer, MBA is an option. Yes, please go. But this also is an option because this will help you to go back to your roots. Because as a Kashmiri Pandit, if you get a job in the state, you are likely to be posted also in Kashmir. And there you can bring about reconciliation by being a good officer, by being a people friendly officer. And why not take this chance?" Gradually, we were able to develop their personalities. We were able to develop confidence in them. We were able to develop communication skills in them. And over these years, about 300 of these people have come through us. Some, of course, have not been very regular, but out of all those we have made aware, about two or three have qualified, some in
very
the
good.
IRS, Indian Revenue Service, some in the KS. And there are now, I find that in the community among youth, what we had intended has happened, that there is an urge to enter the civil service and to make an impact. And that is the purpose for which we had started this. Ashok Bhan, Kuldeep Khoda, Mr. T.K. Razdan, Mr. Bhushanlal Jalali, and Mr. Rajnath Bhatt. These are the core people who are today online, sending courses material to these children, sending those the
Excellent.
question papers, and helping them to solve all those problems the way they're required to solve. And I find that our youth today is prepared to take the option of the Indian Administrative Service. And it's always good to find that more and more Kashmiri Pandits, if not in the IAS, are coming into the Kashmir Administrative Service, and they've started making an impression by their good work. So this is the initiative we've taken. I mean, we are not a coaching center. We don't take any fees. It is an informal kind of an interaction because of our liking, because of our passion for the cause. And so far, we have the satisfaction that we have developed a pool of youth who have now confidence, who have articulation, who have a vision that there is a world beyond the computer, there's a world beyond the management school, there's a world beyond a professional engineer's college. So I hope more and more youngsters will take the IAS and qualify.
That's so wonderful, sir. It's the greatest contribution you have done. I mean, just motivation. We need personalities like you, like Ban Saab, like Khoda Saab, who can come around and not waste. The structure as you defined, it seems to be very, very authentic one, and you are just gathering and collecting those people who are really brilliant and who have an aptitude for this, and then you are the inspiration. We need a motivation and inspiration to bring these people around. Once this bandwagon starts moving in, I think slowly and gradually your effort will bear a lot of fruits, and will be again back to the rails in the corridors of power, like you people,
Yes,
you
yes, yes,
personalities
yes.
like you are there.
And we keep telling them. We have had Kashmiri Pandits who are eminent bureaucrats.
Yeah.
We P.N. Kaul Saab, Mr.
Okay.
D.N. Kaul, the IG, and
I,
charismatic people, Mr. S.K. Raina, Transport, Mr. R.C. Raina,
yes,
all these people, Mr. Manmohan Wazir, all of them were iconic figures who had
yes.
adjusted themselves in Kashmir, were popular, were liked because they were people friendly. And the Kashmiri Pandit, if you recall, has always wielded a lot of influence over the Kashmiri
Yes, the roots.
majority
Because of
because
their
of his
roots.
wisdom, because of
This
his wisdom, because of his accommodation, and because he has been sensitive. And today also, there are so many people who recall the teachers who taught them and shaped their personalities. And there are legendary teachers who are in the Kashmiri Pandit community
lot of
who
it.
are still
Oh,
remembered.
I was
So
the
they have
teachers.
had a role. And we've been telling this to these youngsters: look at your past. We have contributed to society in various ways. You can also do that. And this will be one step of going back into your roots.
That will be a great renaissance, great resurrection, great moving back to that particular glory in times. Bakaya Sahib, now we are almost towards the closing of the session. I would like to ask what who's your ideal, who's your who's your who's the ideal personality in your life? Hello, hello, hello. Are you
Beg your
some?
pardon.
Yeah, yeah. What I'm saying is that
That was a distraction.
okay, doesn't matter. It must be over by now. Uh,
Yes,
I
yes.
what I'm asking is that I you always mention that your life partner had a great role in your life. One, another thing I want to ask a person like Vijay Bakaya, with so much of wisdom, so much of charismatic appeal, and so much of goodness around, and besides being a very very competent person who remained in the corridors of power, in the echelons of power, in the top positions. Who is the ideal of Vijay Bakaya? विजय बकाया साहब का आइडियल पर्सनैलिटी कौन सी है? एनीबडी, इट कुड बी एनीबडी, historic, non-historic, personal, friend, anybody.
Well, my father has been my greatest idol. My father. He
That's
was he was a self-made man who remained absolutely faithful to his principles. Who started from Biscu School, did well there, and then rose to the rank of a professor and a dean. And I think I imbibed from him the qualities of head and heart that I think I still am proud of. I mean, he was people friendly, he had compassion, he was sensitive, and he was a scholar. And he has been my greatest motivator. Then my mother, who also was a great help in the family, like all mothers, you know. But she was broad minded, despite the fact that she belonged to a conservative background. And she adjusted with the changes that were happening around her in the lifestyle and thinking. And she did not create any conflict. And then, of course, I have to salute my wife, who stood by me and took care of the family, took care of the relations, and was able to hold the family together, hold the kutumb together, and remained a mother-like figure for my siblings. And I have always said this, that she was a pillar of strength. And of course, she keeps complaining that I don't acknowledge that enough. But I'm not
that's
really,
common.
I'm not really demonstrative. But the fact remains that for a civil
That's
servant, you need some kind of anchor, because only then he can go out and do his professional job if he knows that his family is being taken care of. And she's a homemaker, so she didn't ever nurse any ambitions of working, although she is quite well educated. So some of these, and then I was very much impressed with Sheikh Mohammed Abdullah.
all right. Really?
He was very fond of me, and I used to have interaction with me. In fact, I was the first non-Muslim deputy commissioner posted in the valley after
Wow.
PN Call, who was posted in Baramulla in the year 62, 63. I was posted in 79. And between this period, there was no Kashmiri Pandit who was posted as a deputy commissioner in the valley. There was an unwritten law that only people from a particular community should be appointed on sensitive assignments. And uh, so we used to interact. And I served as deputy commissioner 5 years in the valley. And I found that he had no bitterness. He did not have any bitterness for
Okay.
the 16 years that he had spent in jail. And he had a particular affection for the Kashmiri Pandits.
Is it
He,
true?
yes, yes. You know, there are many Kashmiri Pandits who feel that he did his agrarian reforms only to dispossess us. But I, when I talked to him, felt that he really meant that Kashmiri Pandits should be taken care of. I was, I mean, the fact that I was sent as a deputy commissioner to to a newly created district, and for the first time,
Because
Shupian
normally
was
it is normally said that they only had the ornamental Kashmiri Pandits in their bandwagon, only ornamental kind,
no,
not the
no.
genuine.
As I said, DN Call was an IG.
Okay.
SK Raina was a transport commissioner. RC Raina was settlement commissioner. Mr. Satlal Kaul, Mr. Sopori, and they were all holding important positions. Mr. J.N. Cole, he was finance secretary, and they shaped things. You know, it's a myth to say that they were ornamental. They were
Okay.
used because their wisdom was used, their competence was utilized. I mean, I was so Sheikh Abdullah did inspire me, and because of his because of his what do I say, stature, and
Stature.
because of his ability to move on, and because of his real desire that Kashmiri Pandit should be taken care of. Of course, his main
Mm.
philosophy was to take the Kashmiri Muslim majority up because
That
they
is
were the
true.
downtrodden, they were the backward classes.
And unfortunately, now even Kashmiri Muslims curse him. And that's very unfortunate. At least he did lot many things for them, for Kashmiri Muslims. At least they should have been thankful. I don't know, somewhere down the line, this thanklessness is there, one part of our genes. I must start with that. Sir, you have a very, what do you call it, euphonious voice. You are a great orator as well, because
Yeah, in my new party, Apni
yeah,
Party, you
yeah,
know, I have had more occasion to practice my oration, as you say, because
wonderful.
I've been given more opportunities. In the previous party, I was not so visible or not so upfront. So
Oh,
I believe that maybe I are able to deliver my views better than many, and because I can see the reaction among the people. So today, my oration is being used to spread the message of the Apni Party, which says, "Let us forget the past and move ahead."
move ahead. That should be the mule mantra of everyone, because we need change is an inevitable phenomenon of nature. We only thing which is permanent, that is the change. You have a euphonious voice, and you have a background, a legacy of being an actor who was known as Dilip Kumar. People used to throng there, and this is a great kind of a thing, because I know nowadays we don't have these plays like Mohan Rakesh, person like Mohan Rakesh, playwrights like Mohan Rakesh now, Vijay Tandulkar now. I mean, all these Badal Sarkar. I mean, no, we don't have such playwrights nowadays. Nowadays, even the theaters seem to be brimmed with so much of imagery, less of the soul. This is my, as a theater critic, I have been writing since 40 years about the theater. But one thing is a very great thing, that people, when people love you as an actor, when people love your performance, that is something which is a God given thing. You are a great orator and you have a wonderful voice. I've seen you reciting the poetry of probably your sibling, your sister, Santosh ji was a great literature, Santosh Bakaya ji, and you are a wonderful reciter. I mean, it brings soul back to your poetry. Can you recite a poem? Can you recite a poem? Uh, can you recite a poem while we close this program, because people want to really listen to your that euphonics, your this.
Those were the days, the days when I used to
Yeah,
regale people with the recitation of poems.
yeah,
But the times have changed, I think you had sent a poem that you have written
yeah. I'd
to
send a
me.
poem. Yeah, once. Yeah, I don't know whether
Yeah,
if it is with
I
you. If it
found,
is, you can.
I found,
Yeah.
I found it was reflecting the disorientation of the community after migration, and the
In a
trauma
romantic way.
of uprooting. The trauma of uprooting was very well reflected in that
Yeah,
particular format of your poem,
yeah.
and I was quite impressed. And
Okay.
uh,
Uh,
you want me to
Perhaps
recite that?
you can recite one paragraph if, in case you want. I want only. I'm interested in recitation of anything, not only my poem. Any poem you can recite.
Your Quest Symphony on Dark Silky Night.
Yeah, that's the whole poem I wrote.
Quiet symphony on dark silky night, and the universe that I uphold. Warm chirp from debonair nests
Uh,
gorge me deep along dizzy alleys.
Beautiful.
Invisible thoughts meander from far. Breathe somewhere breathe somewhere is stealthily moods, merging existence with that of mine. Uh, Ever growing on infinite skies, all marble dwellings submerged and humble, musing to the nooks of ravishing flights of wander and rush, all mosaic roads on ponds, waters, and colors so gay, dreams now shout loud all night, sunk alleys. I cry at state dreams so days. I think I was not able to
That's
read properly.
That's enough. That's wonderful, wonderful lines. And this has made my poem immortal. That Bagaya Sahab, with his wonderful voice, has, I mean, recited this poem. But one famous poem I will really like. I will be. I mean, slightly. I would like to pursue you further before we close up. End up the Madhushala. Madhushala is something which you recite and which is your one of the favorite poet. Haribansh Raj Bachchan's that beautiful poetry. Can I recite some paragraphs from Madhushala?
I don't know whether I recall any stanza, but Madhushala is a classic. It's a celebration of the joy of living, and
Hmm.
it is a paean to ecstasy. It's a paean to the ability to take the best out of life in any
Yes.
given situation and to live in harmony with other individuals. So I used to recite it, and I like to recite it. I don't know whether I can recall any stanza. I think I
Yes.
do.
Yeah. Please, please. That's
Don't mind if it. I mean, it may not be in Tarannum,
doesn't matter.
because
No,
the sur I don't have.
I'm more
I'll,
interested in recitation. Your recitation.
बनी रहें अंगूर लताएं जिनसे मिलती है हाला, बनी रहे ये मिट्टी जिससे बनता है मधु का प्याला, बनी रहे ये मदिर पिपासा तृप्त न होन जो होना जाने, बनी रहे ये मदिर पिपासा तृप्त न जो होना जाने, बने रहे ये पीने वाले, बनी रहे ये मधुशाला. This is
Beautiful.
um, oh, I can recite another one,
Yeah,
if you
please.
like, if you have the
Yes,
time.
yes, please, please, please.
uh, मंद झकोरों के प्यालों से मधुर तु सौरभ की हाला, भर
Beautiful.
भर कर है अविल मिताता साकर मधु मद मतवाला, हरे हरे नव पल्लव तरुगण नूतन डाले वल्लरिया, झुक 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 झूम रहे हैं मधुबन में है मधुशाला, झूम रहे हैं यम आएगा लेके जब तब खूब चलूंगा पीहाला,
Beautiful.
पीड़ा संकट कष्ट नरक के क्या समझेगा मतवाला, क्रूर कठोर कुटिल कुविचारी अन्यायी यमराजों के डंडों की जब मार पड़ेगी आड़ करेगी मधुशाला.
Wonderful, sir. Wonderful.
Thank you.
तृप्त हो गया. I mean, I feel so happy by your recitations. And Harivansh Rai Bachchan has come
बनी
alive.
रहे मदिर पिपासा तृप्त न जो होना जाने,
तृप्त न हो जो होना चाहे.
बने
Beautiful.
रहे ये पीने वाले, बनी रहे ये मधुशाला. Let those who love living remain alive
Remain
to the
alive. Keep.
Madhushala, which provides you all the happiness.
Yeah, that's true. Thank you very much, sir. It was a great honor to have you in our show. We have seen the entire journey, although the scope of the program is limited. But then again, I mean, we went through all the bays of your personality, and you were as an administrator, as the crisis manager, and your childhood memories of Jaipur. And this was a beautiful, eloquent, and a wonderful session. It will be memorable and reminiscent for all the times to come because this program goes into the archives And these were the wonderful anecdotes we had with you. Anyway, we are very much indebted your magnanimity to having an audience with us. Thank you once again.
Thank you very
And
much for having me here. And
thanks a lot.
congratulations for having taken this initiative for this new format of conversation with individuals. The Kashmiri Pandits within the community, there are great achievers who
Yeah.
are not well known, who want to say something and who should be asked to say something about how they have achieved so many things. And but there are at the same time many people in the community who pull those people down. They don't think that anyone can be an achiever. These
That's
these
that's
achievers have to be brought up front, and that's what you are doing. And of course, there are prophets of doom everywhere,
yeah.
but we can ignore them. Ignore
No,
them. And thank you very much. We're very
blessings
proud to
along with
belong.
Vijay. Best wishes, best luck.
We're,
God
we're
bless you.
very proud to belong to this community. And this has a good future because this community has shown resilience. It has proved to the world that it can come out of adversity like the phoenix, it can come out of the ashes. And therefore, I believe that the community should come out of its sense of victimhood. The time is gone when we should beat our
Yeah,
chests. We
we
have
have become
proved to the world.
we
We've
have
proved to the world that we have retained our original nature. We are sensitive, we are compassionate, we are accommodating, and we have a far sight. Let us remain true to that nature because that was what made us survive as a minority in a huge majority. And that is why there is an urge in Kashmir for us to return and create that harmonious environment which existed and which was talked about with pride and admiration. Thank you.
pleasure, sir.
Thank
Pleasure,
you.
sir. All
Thank
the
you very
best,
much.
good health, long
Thank
life,
you.
and
Thank you, sir.
blessings.
Thank you. Thank you.
So that was Vijay Bakaya, former Chief Secretary of Jammu and Kashmir, one of the distinguished IS civil servant of the country, a poet, an orator, a literature, cricketer, a theatre personality, and a wonderful human being who's loved and adored by all. I think you must have enjoyed this session today across the people of the diaspora watching and in tuning into this program across the globe. I'm so delighted that we had him on the show. This was a wonderful show. I have enjoyed it. You can write to me in my message box for that for this wonderful session. That was all for today. Thank you very much. We'll next Sunday at 7 p.m. at Sheetalnath Conversations, we'll have another historic show. Thanks a lot. God bless you all. Good night.